What is up, folks? Welcome back to Sinisterum. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, give us 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform to help us get this show in front of more people. Today, we're going to be talking about the Hinterkaifeck murders that happened in 1922 in Bavaria. And this is a wild case. There are so many theories. There's so many loose ends. And to be honest with you, it blows my mind. So stick around, check it out. Let's get started. In a remote corner of 1920s Germany, down a winding forest road, stood a lonely little farmhouse. No neighbors for miles, no witnesses, and after one snowy March night, no survivors. This is the story of the Hinterkaifeck murders, a case so chilling it still haunts Germany a century later. The Gruber family lived in that isolated farmhouse. Andreas, the stern patriarch, his wife Cecilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, her 2 children, and a maid. 6 people living quietly off the land. But in the days before their deaths, something was off. Andreas reported hearing footsteps in the attic. He found footprints in the snow, leading to the house, but not away. A set of house keys went missing. The family told neighbors strange things were happening. Then, silence. On April 4th, 1922, concerned townspeople walked the long road to the farm. The animals were fed, smoke rose from the chimney, but no one answered the door. Then, in the barn, they made a discovery straight from a nightmare. One by one, the bodies of Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and young Cecilia were found stacked beneath hay, bludgeoned with a pickaxe. Inside the house, they found the youngest child, Josef, murdered in his crib, and the maid, dead in her bed. 6 people brutally killed, and the killer, long gone. Or worse, still inside. What chilled investigators to the bone wasn't just the brutality. It was the suggestion that the killer had been living there for days. Neighbors had seen smoke from the chimney after the murders. Food had been eaten, animals cared for. The killer may have slept in their beds. Imagine that. A murderer hiding in your attic, listening to your every move, waiting, and then staying behind. Then came the whispers, ugly rumors. The townsfolk spoke of incest between Andreas and Victoria. They said Josef, the baby, wasn't just Victoria's child, but Andreas's too. Could this have been a revenge killing? A scorned lover? Or perhaps Victoria's late husband, back from the dead? There was even talk of Victoria trying to flee, of secret lovers and a mysterious fortune. But every theory led to a dead end. Every suspect was eventually ruled out. The police interviewed dozens, exhumed bodies. They even rebuilt the skulls in Munich, hoping for answers. Nothing. The case was reopened in the 1990s with modern forensics. Still nothing. No fingerprints, no DNA, no confession. To this day, no one knows who killed the Gruber family, but many believe the killer lived in the attic, watching, waiting. 100 years later, the Hinterkaifeck farmhouse is gone, but its story lingers, echoing through time like the footsteps in the attic. Whoever committed those murders never paid for them. And if they stayed hidden that long, maybe they never left at all. What's up, folks? Welcome back to Sinisterum. Thank you so much for joining us today. As you've already seen, we are talking about the Hinterkaifeck murders today, and what a crazy story and interesting case that is. That's been one that I've followed and listened to and thought about for a long time, and so I wanted to bring it to the podcast today. So, joining me today once again are my brother Josh
Hello.
and Papa Jefe, our father.
Hello, everybody.
So, how are you guys doing this week?
Pretty good.
Yeah, not bad at all. So glad that we're not getting a bunch of rain anymore.
Yeah, Josh, did you have a chance to get out on the golf course this week?
Yep. We went out a couple times. Me and
Nice. Did you go in Powell?
uh yes, we did. We went there like as late as possible and
Oh,
we played it pretty much in the dark. So,
Nice.
yeah.
were you guys the only one on the course?
Yes. And we were trying
Nice.
we were trying not to get struck by lightning, but
Oh,
there
Nice.
was a big
That's
storm.
always fun.
Yeah.
That's
It's
an extra layer, extra added excitement.
yeah,
for sure.
especially when you're just holding metal clubs up in the air. Makes it interesting.
Trying to get struck.
Yeah.
Right on. Did Jace go with you?
No, he wasn't back from Yellowstone yet.
Man, I would
Well,
not go to Yellowstone now. Well,
I know there's too many people, too many tourists that are trying to pet buffalo.
yep. That's real crazy.
People are starting to speculate actually that Yellowstone there's some activity going on with the
Well, there was a story. Mom just told me about it this morning that a new hole opened up or something like that in Yellowstone in the last day or so, whatever that means. I mean,
A new geyser.
geyser or some some underground activity. Yeah.
Is that what you were talking about, Josh? Or are you talking about some murder?
no. The only murder I've seen is that poor buffalo that boiled alive.
I saw that, and actually, I saw one of that happened to a guy where he tried to. I think he just got in there and thought he was like a hot tub. It's like,
That
dude,
was that was a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship, and he's like, "Let's get in like a hot tub."
and then they disintegrated.
Yeah,
Horrible.
that's ridiculous.
That's just dumb.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you ever go to Yellowstone, don't be stupid and stay on the path. There's a path for a reason,
Yep,
right?
for sure.
So, and don't try to pet the buffalo. I don't care if somebody in front of you is trying to pet a buffalo, pull out your camera, but don't do it yourself. So,
And don't tailgate. Don't tailgate because people slam on their brakes and run up the side of the road, up the cliff or whatever, and try to take pictures with these buffalo and elk or whatnot.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's jump into the case today. Like we said, we're talking about the Hinterkaifeck murders, and you guys have already gotten the rundown because you watched the dramatic retelling that we do every single week. So this is a crazy, crazy case that happened in the early 1900s. Um, do you guys have any initial thoughts before I jump in and give some facts?
No, at this point I have some theories, especially with the footprints to the place. Has some theories about the sounds that were heard in the attic. Yeah,
It's a very, very interesting case. I'm I'm excited to hear those theories because it's all really odd to me.
For sure. So, just to recap, there were 6 victims. This happened near Grobern, Bavaria, in Germany, and there were 6 victims: Andreas Gruber, Cecilia Gruber, his wife Victoria Gabriel, who was their widowed daughter,
right.
Cecilia Gabriel, who was, I guess, would be a junior, uh, or I guess was the namesake. Cecilia Gruber Senior is the namesake of Cecilia Gabriel, who was Victoria's 7-year-old daughter, and then baby Joseph Gabriel, who was 2 years old at the time, Victoria's son, and lastly Maria Baumgartner, who was the maid, which it was her first day on the job when this happened.
Yeah, what
Talk
a way to
about
start.
That's
talk about the worst first day.
that's unlucky.
I hate to laugh about that, but it's like, good night. It's so,
Okay, let's pause here. Do you have any worst first day stories, whether it's work, school. I've got one, but you guys, I wanted to
I
check with you guys first.
I think I have one. I mean,
I
Okay,
it's not of me, but last week actually,
go
I
for it.
don't.
last
Last week.
last week there was a um there was a altercation in my town with a policeman and a guy that was living under a bridge, and I'm not too
Never
sure.
heard about
I'm not
that.
too sure if it was the policeman's first week, but I think it was a policeman's first. Like he was pretty new, working for the police department, and he ended up getting shot. If
God.
if it's the right policeman that I'm thinking of, but yeah,
Wow.
what a he's not from around here. If it's the correct policeman, I'm not too certain, but um, he moved from Oregon, so I'm sure the police department was like, you know what, it's not too crazy out here in Worland, but and then this happens, so it's unfortunate.
Jeez. Yeah, what a way to start your new job
Yeah,
in the slow, sleepy little town of Orland.
yeah. Which the policeman is all right if it's not serious. He didn't get shot in a serious spot, but
Nice. That's good. All right, Dad, what about you?
Well, the only thing I could think of is I was in college and I was kind of in between jobs while I was in college. I was trying to make some money, and I worked for Jack in the Box for 2 weeks. But at the beginning of that 2 weeks, my friends decided to come and order. They knew I was working there, and at the same time, here comes a bus full of kids and everything. And I was scrambling. I was the only one back there trying to put hamburgers together. And I remember the best man in my for my wedding, you know, he brings his hamburger back, and there was no hamburger meat in his hamburger because I was moving so fast. I forgot to put the.
That's funny.
Anyway,
Well, mine happened at Northwest College in Powell, Wyoming, and it was my first day, first class in college. I'm trying to remember what the class was even was. It was like group communication or something like that. And I go into this room. I'm a little bit late. I sit down, and first thing, the desk I sit in breaks, and next thing I know, I'm just like on my back, looking straight up at the ceiling, and
but
everyone's
didn't that
laughing.
happen in high school too in a Spanish
It
class?
it did. I broke my desk in high school in Spanish class, so I don't know what the freaking deal is. But that was everybody's first introduction to me. They're like, "Oh, look at this guy! What an idiot!" So there's
Oh,
that one. But actually, your story reminded me of the time that I worked for Pizza Hut for 2 days, and that was also in Powell, Wyoming. And I'm like, man, I need to get a job. And so I went to Pizza Hut, and I was doing my training back there, just off the kitchen, like doing this training on the TV, or not TV, on their computer. And all of a sudden, I hear the manager, who is this like kind of rough lady, and she's just like screaming at everybody about how they're like doing a horrible job. And I was just like, I'm not doing this. So I didn't go back, and I kept the apron and the hat and the name tag, and I just
do you still
and your shirt.
do you still have
I
it?
just
And your
never
shirt.
went back.
Do you still?
I did up until like 5 years ago. I finally donated it to the Salvation Army. So somebody out there, unless they threw it away, has a killer Pizza Hut get up. Maybe they dressed up as a Pizza Hut employee for Halloween. Who knows?
Oh my gosh.
So, anyways, thankfully, none of us got murdered on the first day of our jobs or school. So that's a good start. So, sorry, Maria. Okay, let's talk about a couple strange events that happened before the murders, because if these things happened to me, I would have moved and never gone back to this house. So number one, footprints in the snow. Andreas found footprints leading from the forest to the farm, but none going back. So red flag much if those aren't your footprints. You might want to, like, I don't know, look around your house and see if there's somebody there. Uh, Attic noises. So the family heard footsteps and movement in the attic, but no one was found when they checked. So
Gotcha.
that's crazy. And actually, I believe that's why the first maid had quit in the first place, because she, thought she was experiencing paranormal things or like, ghost things. And apparently they went and checked and nobody was up there. So that's scary, right?
Speaking about attics, um, have you
Oh,
guys have you guys heard of the balloon boy in Fort Collins?
I
The
have
balloon
not.
boy in Fort Collins. Tell us about the balloon boy.
So there's this family that was making, they made a flying saucer, and they were they were just tested it out, and they wanted to, I don't know, they're really weird family, but three small boys, and uh anyways, the they were finally getting ready to launch it. It was full of helium and stuff, and there was like there was enough space for a person to be in there, and they filled it up with helium, and it started to fly away, and they forgot to like attach it to the ground so it wouldn't fly away, and so it started to fly up, and the oldest son was like, I think the the middle brother is in the balloon, and it just took off, and all of they called 911 like 20 minutes later for some reason, which is really weird.
20 minutes.
Yeah, and so the whole town, it made national news, and the whole town was trying to get this balloon and figure out how they're going to get this boy out of the balloon safely. And soon
My God.
soon it lands, and they grab it, and it lands actually pretty soft, but they open it up and there's not a boy in there. And so they're like, what the heck? And it turns out the middle brother climbed into the attic of the garage and just took a nap up there. And
After getting all this attention,
Yeah.
national attention on this story.
yeah,
Oh
which
my.
Nice.
and they were on the television. Like, I think it was like Larry's TV show or whatever it is. I forget. Well, some show. And they were interviewing, and they asked the boy, why did you like do this? And the boy said, because we were doing it for the show. And that's all that's all they said. So the family got a lot of hate.
Threw the family under the bus.
Yeah, the family got a lot of hate, and it's all speculation, but the dad ended up going to jail for it.
Oh.
So I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
You guys will have to watch the documentary on Netflix.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Is it, when did this? So this happened a while ago. This wasn't recent.
Yeah, I'm probably like 10 years ago, I'd say.
Okay, I figured I probably would have heard about it.
It was, yeah.
Fort Collins is pretty close to us.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That reminds me of the urban legend, which I think it's actually true, of that guy who like attached a bunch of helium balloons to his lawn chair and like flew up. I think it inspired the movie Up, maybe. But anyways, and he was flying and he went into like U.S. airspace or like restricted airspace, but he like had it all planned out. So he was like in his lawn chair connected with these balloons, and like he had a bunch of like Bud Light, and he had like a 22 or like a BB gun, and then so anytime he wanted to like, if he's going too high, he would just shoot and pop a couple balloons
And come down. Takes a lot of brain cells to do that.
Sounds like a good time to
He's
me.
a genius.
Think that
I'd do
through.
Yeah.
All right. So nice. I like that attic story. So the other things that happened that were pretty conspicuous: lost keys. There was a set of house keys that disappeared shortly before the murders happened. And, back in 1922, you couldn't just hop down to the old Walmart and make, stick your key in a machine and have a new key made. So I think that was probably a big deal for them. there was a disturbed newspaper. So Andreas found a Munich newspaper that no one in the household had purchased. And
Right.
of course, they're out in the middle of nowhere. So it's like, that's weird. And then we already talked about the previous maid quit. The previous maid quit 6 months earlier, saying the house was haunted. So
Right.
red flag. I probably wouldn't. Probably sell my house and leave if that happened to me.
Well, wasn't there some money, a significant amount of money that was left up in the attic too? Did you read something about that?
I think I heard something about that.
All right. You want to hear some of my theories on this?
Yes. Before we get there, though,
Oh,
let's just recap real quick the crime. So the murders took place late on the night of March 31st, 1922. The killer lured the family members into the barn one by one. At least that's what the police speculated, possibly using cries or noise. The victims were killed with a mattock, which is a type of pickaxe. And then
mm,
afterwards, the killer entered the house and murdered Yosef, the 2-year-old baby in his crib, and Maria, the new maid, in her bed. And so the bodies weren't discovered until April 4th, when neighbors went to check on the family after days of silence. And they found the 4 bodies in the barn stacked up on top of each other and covered with hay. And then they found the maid and Yosef inside the house, both bludgeoned. And so then the murder weapon, they said, again, likely a homemade mattock. And it wasn't found until a year later in the attic.
mm.
Um, and then the autopsy, they performed an autopsy in the barn. Shockingly, young Cecilia, 7, had survived the attack for hours, pulling out her own hair in pain before dying. That's horrible and sad.
Mm.
The killer stayed after the murders because they found that the animals were fed, meals inside the house were eaten, smoke was seen coming out of the chimney, and then beds appeared to be used, suggesting the killer remained in the house for days after the murder. And again, the murder happened on the 31st of, was it March or May? 31st of March. And they weren't discovered until April 4th. And so that's 5 days of discrepancy right there. There were no signs of robbery, so large sums of money were left untouched. That might be what you were talking about.
Right.
So whatever the killer was doing, it was not to steal anything. It was like a crime of passion. And then there was no forced entry, so the killer may have had a key. Again, they had some keys that were taken that they were unaccounted for. And then the skulls were removed. This is just a weird thing. The skulls were removed. The victims' skulls were sent to Munich for forensic study, but they were actually lost during World War II, so nothing came of it. So somebody lost 6 skulls
Yeah, which is
out there,
creepy.
which is bizarre. So, okay, let's get into the theories. Go for it.
Well, I just wanted to say something about, the whole attic. The one maid was saying that she heard these sounds in the attic and that she thought it was, haunted and everything. And I don't buy that. It's not haunted. And the reason why I say that is that in recent years, and maybe you can look it up on the internet, but I've heard of, especially in like big cities or people that have big houses, that there have been people that have made their way into houses when owners are gone and have gotten up into their attic spaces and everything and living undetected, whether they're homeless or groups of people. And it's a challenge to them to be able to do that. And then later on discovering that someone had been living in their attic. And so, these people, were able to get that key. I'm talking not just days, but a month, 2 months, or whatever beforehand, and made their way into the attic. Now, because of the money and everything that was found, a significant amount, they could have of taken some of that money from other places that they've did this to as well, and got to this farm thinking, you know what, I like this place. Instead of just living in the attic, we're going to take the whole farm over. And so, and it may not have been just one person; it could have been more than one. But those were the sounds in the attic, and of course, you know, subflooring, that sort of thing back then. probably wasn't as sound, especially in an older house, being that it was 1922, I think it was, yeah, 1922. So that house, that farmhouse, whatever, could have been built many years before that in the 19th century, even the 18th century. And so, yeah, there's stories of that, of people going in as a challenge and living like this.
Hmm. Josh, do you have any initial theories before I cover the most popular ones?
Um, I think it was the the maid that quit beforehand. Maybe maybe she quit not because it was haunted, but
She was pissed.
she was not getting paid well or something, because there was all that.
Mm.
She realized that these people were way wealthier than I don't know, maybe not, because then the money would have been stolen. I don't know. I just think the maid quitting
True.
the maid quitting is a little bit fishy,
Mm.
just because.
Well, she would have had, she would have had access to get those keys, right? I
Yeah.
mean, she was in
Yeah,
the house. So,
Yeah.
that makes sense. So you're thinking that, Josh, that maybe whoever was in the attic was involved with the maid that was fired.
I think it was the maid.
Mm. Maid herself, huh?
She just never she quit
nice.
she quit, but she never left.
Yikes. Well, let me talk
Yeah.
about go ahead, Dad.
Oh, I was going to tell you about another theory that I was thinking about too. You guys and myself, we live in cold country, and this was in Bavaria. Is that correct?
Yeah.
In Germany. So that's pretty cold country too. And I saw some footage on this where there was like footprints in snow. And I don't know, you guys have witnessed this as well, and I've witnessed it too, that you can have footprints or whatever, and then there'd be like a melt where the temperature gets a little bit, warmer, and then there'd be a freeze. And so you've got these patches of snow that are more like ice, and you can even slip on it and everything, and you don't see footprints. And so, my theory is that, yeah, you had footprints of someone that came to the house, but yet if they were to leave, it could have been after a melt, and then you've got this more ice that they could have taken, and it really could be undetected with any footprints getting out of there.
Especially if they stayed for 5 days, right? Because there was a
Right,
5-day discrepancy. And we
right.
know from living in Wyoming that you can, Wyoming and South Dakota, you can go from -30 to like 40 degrees in a day,
Yeah,
Mhm.
or
exactly,
less than a day. So you never know. I mean, snow comes and melts like that. So
exactly.
that's that's definitely plausible. So okay, let me talk about the five top theories that are most popular. So number one, this is the hidden intruder theory. This posits that somebody may have been living in the attic for days or weeks beforehand, and this
Right.
is this is supported by the missing keys. Obviously, somebody had to take those, unless they just misplaced them, which is doubtful. Attic noises, footprints, and chimney smoke after the murders. I think that's a big thing. It's like who, somebody was obviously there because the neighbors were seeing chimney smoke and found, food and stuff that was
Right.
eaten. The second one is the family feud and incest theory. So this is where, Andreas, and we didn't talk about this yet, but Andreas and Victoria were rumored to have an incestuous relationship. Cue Sweet Home Alabama right here. Okay. Both had been convicted of incest in 1915, and I guess they served jail time for it.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and then Victoria may have had other romantic entanglements, possibly causing jealousy or revenge motives. And so,
Hmm.
I didn't know that about the conviction, um, but that's pretty plausible. I think the fact that she had a kid with her dad, that for me, something along those lines where it's like whether it was her husband or somebody else she was romantically involved with. I think
Yeah.
that points to something like that. And speaking of, the next one is the Carl Gabriel theory. So
Well,
Victoria's
hang
husband.
on before that, but you think about this. I'm sorry, I'm jumping in, but I mean, number one, that's gross. Number two, it's messed up. But can think about the psychological effect of that when it's not normal, and so that could set somebody off psychologically to do something absolutely crazy. So there
Just
could have
someone who
been,
didn't like them or something and was like, "You guys are disgusting."
yeah, it could have been, yeah, because from what I saw, the father, Andreas Gruber,
Yeah,
wasn't a well liked person anyway.
yeah, I heard that too. He was kind of like a kind of like a hermit, and people didn't
Yeah,
really
so
like
I
him.
go ahead.
That's a good point. So speaking of Victoria's husband, her husband's name was Carl Gabriel. He was reported to be killed in World War I, but no body was recovered. So some believe he faked his death and returned to kill his family after learning of the incest and Yosef's true parentage. So I don't know.
Mm,
I like as far as like what would make a crazy story and a cool movie or something like that. Like I think that sounds pretty cool, but you know, back then it's like how do you get a report like that in World War I, back in
right?
that time, unless you have a body. So obviously no body was recovered. Now, so many people were killed in the world wars. I mean, how can you possibly recover all the bodies? And so
Yeah.
you kind of have to go based on, word of mouth and stuff like that. But man, I personally I like that theory. I think it's interesting. I don't know how plausible it is, but it's one that is, I think, super interesting. So the fourth one, neighbor or local involvement. So many
Mhm.
locals were investigated. A neighbor named Lorenz Schlittenbauer, who was once romantically involved with Victoria and possibly Joseph's father, was considered suspicious but never charged. Now, as I was researching and thinking about and looking into the details of this case, he was a neighbor, and unless he was absolutely stupid, if it was him who did it, if he was a neighbor, why would you stay in the house for 5 days? I mean, you would get in, get out, go back to your own house because you're a neighbor and have an alibi, right? So I don't know. I lean away from that, but I do think it's
Mhm.
interesting that he was romantically involved with Victoria and that he could be Yosef's father. So, but then again, if he was Yosef's father, why would he kill him too? I mean, why are you going to, you would think you would take the baby if you were, mad at the family. I don't know. That's odd to me.
It's kind of weird because murderers often they'll they'll try and flaunt and and kind of brag about the act that they just did. Like maybe he was just staying there and showing off that like, oh, I can get away with this, and just living
Mm.
there. It's kind of similar. I think there was a murder case in Japan actually that was really similar, where he stayed there for I think up to like months, even just staying in the people's
Mm.
houses.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it was really interesting because I
And and you also hear about those murderers that will like take something as a
mhm.
trophy.
Yeah.
Or even like
Yeah.
right
So
after the murder, they'll go back to the murder site and just check it out and see, or like, oh, I'm just checking in to see if anyone's even gonna figure this out.
mm,
There's like I've seen a couple stories about people who like are the murderer, but then they like go and help like law enforcement like find the body, but they're like in a search party and like nobody knows.
right.
That's pretty
Yeah,
creepy.
And then or go to the funeral and put on
Yeah.
the fake tears and everything.
kind of
That
kind of
oh my
like.
gosh. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, this just happened. This is like 7 days ago when they were reporting on it. Okay. So I was watching this. This showed up on my feed, and okay, so there's this girl. Where was she from? Uh, I'm not sure where she's from. So this girl gives a eulogy for her mother and her stepfather at their funeral because they
Oh,
died. And it turns out she now is facing 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault because allegedly she shot them. And
oh my
this
goodness.
just happened. And so there's a video of her like giving the eulogy at this. I'll have to send it to you guys at the thing, and she's like, all teary eyed and stuff. But this, it turns out like she's, I have to say allegedly because it's still going on, but was the one who killed them. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my
And so
goodness.
uh, what happened was she ended up calling 911 after her half sister, who was 5. This girl's like, I think 17. Her half sister found the bodies of the mom and the stepdad, and this was I guess near Atlanta, and so the little girl finds the bodies, and then this girl calls 911 and then like tries to fake it, and then like when the funeral happens, she's like, "Oh, I missed them so much," and then it turns out like they discovered that she's the actual killer.
That's messed up.
It is, and that
That's
so
crazy.
speaking of
Oh,
weird things that I think that she obviously had to do that as some to save face and like kind of act like she was not the one who did it. But speaking of killers who do weird things like that, that's wild.
oh man, that is messed
Mhm.
up. Oof. Hmm.
Okay, last theory, that it was could have been a professional hit or a cover up. So some theories suggest this could be an organized cover up due to inheritance or secrets or even blackmail. And so with the weirdness of Yosef being, it could have been Schlittenbauer's kid or um, Andreas's kid. There's that weird blackmail thing too that could be in there. But so those are the 5 kind of main theories. The one I like to entertain myself is the Carl Gabriel theory because I don't know, my mind likes to go to the wildest things, and I mean it's not cool, but if it was a movie,
That the
it would
movie
be
thing.
it'd be kind of cool where this guy's like off fighting in World War I, and then he like apparently dies, but then like I just imagine him like going back on this like trek back home, and then he finds out that his wife had a freaking kid with her dad, and he's like, oh, I'm pissed. He goes up, sneaks into the attic, he's staying there, he steals the keys, and then when the time is right, he's like, you guys are done.
Wow.
He stays
You
there
know,
for 5 days and then rides off into the sunset, and he's like, credits. Make a good horror movie.
yeah. Well, there's some weird things that I discovered as well, that you haven't mentioned yet. That the autopsies were performed in the barn
Yeah.
the day after the discovery. Okay, and so they're not taken to a lab. You mentioned those heads were sent to Munich, I think it was, and then they
And then
lost them.
Lost. Yeah.
Yeah, and they got lost. We know for sure in the 1920s there was no technology to find DNA and whatnot for sure in the 1920s. But here's what I thought was kind of interesting: that in 1923 that whole farm was demolished and burned, and it says, and while a modern police community, they declined to name the suspect due to privacy laws and lack of definitive proof of who the killer would be, but due to privacy laws. And I'm thinking, what kind of cover up is going on here?
Well,
Uh,
hold on,
and,
hold on
and
one sec. I think just before we do that, the case was reopened in the 1990s, and I think that's what you're talking about.
yeah,
Because what happened was modern police then investigated it, and then they had a suspect.
right.
Uh, but then they are like, we're not going to say it out of respect for the current families that are still
Yeah,
living.
and because of privacy laws, and but that the killer was likely from the local community, and of course because of a lack of definitive proof.
Yeah.
And I don't know, my mind goes to, okay, was there a cover up back then, even, with the police? Um,
Yeah.
even even though there was an autopsy in the barn on site, um, I don't know. Could there have been a connection, or corruption, if you will, within the local um, police department? That whole dirty cop thing. I don't know. There's just so many different levels that I think of in this particular situation, that someone knew someone, and and it always gets tied to politics and money.
Well, yeah, and we're gonna have Brady, our friend Brady, on in a couple of weeks, hopefully, to talk about the Karen Reed case that's going on right now, which is an insane example of conspiracy and government corruption, and people like a judge and police and the DA and all working together to conspire against this woman to frame her for murder, essentially. And so
Hmm.
if that can happen in 2025, of course it can happen in 1922,
Oh, for
and
sure.
you don't have, the technology to investigate that we do today. So that's definitely I think plausible.
Here's something. Did you mention anything about Paul Miller?
No,
Listen to this. Here's a more recent theory. Connects the Hinterkaifeck. Is that how you say it? Hinterkaifeck?
yeah.
Hinterkaifeck murders to Paul Mueller, a German immigrant suspected of committing similar axe murders in the United States around the same time.
So Mueller murdered entire families in the U.S. between 1898 and 1912, including the Villisca axe murders, which Josh and I put out a short about a couple months ago on
Yeah.
our YouTube channel. So go check that out. But in a pattern involving axes and blunt farm tools and isolated homes, no robbery, uh, stacking bodies with the faces covered. So a lot of the same, mo that
Right.
happened at the Hinterkaifeck murders, and so that's pretty suspicious. He could have, done all this stuff in the U.S., skipped across back to Germany, on a ship or something, and then done the same thing over there because he was German. So that's an interesting
Mhm.
theory. Obviously there's no direct evidence. It's a lot of speculation, but again, if you're thinking about the coolest story, man,
Yeah.
that's fun to think about.
Yeah, but you think of, even thinking about that, you think about modern travel, from one country to the next. Man, we have to show our IDs. There's facial recognition. There are cameras. They take your picture, the whole works and everything. But back then, you had a ticket, get on that ship, come over to the United States or back. And so I think it would have been a lot easier for him to flee one crime in one country to another in a different country, or vice versa, and do it
Mhm.
undetected.
Well, and a lot of people actually think that what's his name, Jack the Ripper, started in Britain and then
Right.
came over to the United States, and it could be H. Holmes, which is America's first real and notorious serial killer that murdered a bunch of people at his murder castle in Chicago during the World
Oh,
Fair.
geez.
And we can talk about that sometime too. But I think it's not unreasonable to think that, especially back then when people were coming in and out of America, that somebody like that could have skipped town and gone across the
Mhm.
ocean. All right. So, based off of all of those theories and everything that we've talked about, let's wrap this up. What do you guys think? Do you think any of those five theories or the others that Dad and I talked about, which one is your favorite? And did your mind change on anything?
I think the axe murderer one, where he left um, United States and went back to Germany, that makes a lot of sense because there's oftentimes murderers have the same kind of theme throughout all of their murders. And if he's stacking bodies in one place, like he's gonna do very similar things in Germany. So I think I'm leaning towards that.
Yeah, I think I also lean towards that. You know, it's plausible. I think of like the Golden State Killer. You know, he was in one area at one point. I think what was it, the late '70s, and then he moved. You know, up north from Southern California up north, and it's just kind of and that whole mo continued with him as he moved um, up the coast. And so, and that's that particular case, completely different, but you know, just trying to cover his tracks and thinking he can get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm still with, one of the local theories. I think it's a little bit speculative for someone to come all the way across the ocean. I think, that was happening a lot back then, and it's cool to think about. But I think the most likely thing probably would have been, either Lawrence Schlittenbauer or Carl Gabriel coming back from World War One to unfortunately kill the whole family after he found out about the incestuous relationship. So that's where I think, landing.
Hey, can I got one more that we didn't talk about, and I don't know how much time you want to take with this, but I highlighted this and put a star by it too. It says other suspects included two brothers who had previously worked on the farm, as their sister, the family's former maid, believed them responsible.
It was the former maid that left.
Yes, a
Oh,
family's former maid believed them responsible. So here are two brothers, and I wish I would have brought that up earlier in this podcast, but yeah, that they had worked on the farm previously. So
hmm.
yeah,
Well, they might have been privy to the fact that Andreas was a freak and was romantically involved with his daughter, and that's obviously incest is not something that people take lightly, and so they could have gone back and been like, this is a justice killing or something like that. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Interesting.
yeah.
I had not heard that.
I don't know. I still think it's the axe murder, or it's
Paul Mueller.
Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
That's probably the most likely, to be honest.
sounds like he'd be the murderer.
He goes from like crazy outlandish inventions to murdering a whole family.
Oh, great.
It's like what that reminds me of is like when Winnie the Pooh went into the public domain and then they made the horror movie out of it. Winnie the Pooh. It's like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Good night.
Yeah.
Or I think this did the same thing when Steamboat Willie. Yeah.
That's
Brutal.
horrible.
Yeah. When Doofenshmirtz, if they ever get into the public domain, they're going to do a movie about the Hinterkaifeck murders. He's going to go down. That's funny. Well, we've talked about a lot of this stuff, and there's a lot of different theories that I think could happen and be plausible with this one. So let us know in the comments what you think. What's the most plausible theory? And if we missed anything, feel free to let us know. So thanks again for joining us on this episode of Sinisterum. Again, we try to bring you weekly cases and, talking about murder, true crime, paranormal stuff, and even some cults and that kind of thing. And we'll kind of move into those as we continue. But thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. And if you could give us, 5 stars on your favorite podcast platform, that really helps us grow and get the show out to other people. So thank you so much. And we will see you next week.